Yeah.
I'm a board member and also a lover of nature, and this feels like one of the most important meetings
Yes,
I've had
thank you,
phase
Ali.
two.
Cha, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name's Cha Yang. I believe this is my first meeting. I'm throwing happy to learn from everyone, and hopefully, like me and Brad were talking about, or most of the community were talking about, hopefully we can get this thing on time, not losing the money. That's my main concern. So hopefully we can agree on a lot of things and move on.
Thank you, Dr. Cha. Donna? Donna, you might be on mute. I'll come back to you, Donna, once you get set up. I know you just jumped in. Jeff?
Hi, everyone. My name's Jeff. I work at the Frogtown Community Center for the City of St. Paul through Parks and Recreation. I've been in this committee for a good chunk of, I want to say almost half a year. And I look forward to hearing everyone's opinions and comments here as well.
Thank you, Jeff. Linda?
I'm Linda Mealy Lohman. I'm the co-founder of the Minnesota China Friendship Garden Society and current secretary. And I've been on the DAC from the beginning.
Thank you. Karen?
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Misevich. I am a park maintenance supervisor. I oversee park maintenance for the city of St. Paul. And Brett had asked me to join tonight in case there are any questions that I might be able to answer.
Thank you. Regina?
Yeah, I'm just a community member, and I joined this committee in the beginning, and I've been with it on and off, and I kind of had given up on it, but I was asked to come and listen. So here I am.
Don't give up.
Thank you for joining us.
It's kind of, yeah, I don't want to go into it.
Well, hopefully we can give you some background on what we've been up to. Romy?
Hi, yes, Romy Slowiak. I live at Lake Phalen. I love it. I love the idea of this garden, and I've been involved on the board since about 2015 and on the DAC from the start. And I love what's happening.
Thank you. Ellen?
Hi, I'm Ellen Stewart. I'm a senior landscape architect in Parks and Recreation in our design and construction section, and I am here to support Brett and try and take notes and make sure that we're keeping up.
Stuart?
I'm Stuart Knappmiller. We live a block off the southwest corner of the lake. Bill coerced me into joining the board, and now I get to be the treasurer. And I guess I've been on the DAC since the beginning.
Thank you. Sue?
I'm Sue Clavin. I'm also living on Lake Phalen, so a neighbor, and I love gardening, and I love the fact that the China Garden is being developed in my neighborhood.
Bill?
Bill Zajac, president of the Minnesota China Friendship Garden Society and resident of the area. I also live near Lake Phalen and use the park on a regular basis. So I've been on the DAC from the start.
Thanks, Bill. And Mua?
Hello, my name is Mojong. He is some pronoun. I am the youth leadership program manager that oversees the youth on board St. Paul and the St. Paul Youth Commission. I was asked to be on the DAC by the now Parks and Rec Director, Director Rodriguez.
Thank you. And Donna, we can go back to you. Can you introduce yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Donna Yang. I'm with the Hmong Advisory board members.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that I have missed? I think Carol, I think you jumped on.
Hi, I'm Carol Brash, and I am an art historian who specializes in Chinese gardens, have been studying Chinese gardens and the Chinese garden diaspora since 2000 and, oh gosh, probably before, since about the year 2000. And I've been a part of the DAC and the advisory committee, and I'm really happy to be here and help in any way I can.
Thank you. Great. I will introduce myself. I know everyone here, or you should remember me. I think everyone has been on this. My name is Brett Husong. I'm a landscape architect and project manager, and I've been involved on this project since the installation of the West Gate. And so this is our 8th DAC meeting. A lot of this material will look familiar to most of you. So what I'd like to do is go through the role of the DAC. We'll talk about the process that you have helped to form, and then we'll go through the Hmong Plaza design that was carried forward from a subcommittee that was developed by professionals and artists. Some people are in this group as well. Excuse me, and then we'll go into discussion and talk about next steps. And so,
Brett, I hate to interrupt, but I'm just getting a text message from Gowley, and she's asked me to send her the link, but I'm not sure I'm capable of sending that Teams link to her while this is open. Are you able to do that, or could somebody else?
I could do that.
Oh, thank you.
Great, thank you, Linda.
Yep.
One thing as a reminder, I know there's some background noise going on, so if you're just listening and not talking, please put yourself on mute and then raise your hand and we can get to you. So the purpose of this meeting, and I know the previous meeting has been 6 months ago in June, and so this is really an exciting moment for all of us. And Regina, I think this is exactly why we want you on this call, so we can talk about what we have completed from June and then what we have advanced with the subcommittee of the design professionals, the cultural leaders and artists, and to show you the review of the Hmong Plaza. And so we are assuming that this is the final design advisory committee, other than email updates about the plaza construction and the progress of construction documents. One thing I do want to note is that we've had discussions about the dialect and art stones, and the city has released a statement early in 2022 about moving forward with the phase 2 project, which is what we are on right now. And that is due to funding deadlines and to advance the project in general. And so we are currently showing the art stones, or we currently have the art stones in a temporary location, but as part of this project, we are showing a similar location, but it is going to be a little different, but it will also be permanent, and we'll go through those proposals and what they look like. So I show this as part of a process that Parks and Recreation does, typically with our projects. And so we form a design advisory committee that can help reach out to the community. It is the conduit to the community. And we anticipate or expect that the design advisory committee does take a lot of the information that they see in here and mention that to their social networks and to their neighbors. But we also have other priorities in Parks and Recreation, where we are looking at our system in general. We are looking at the context of the site. We have funding and budget constraints that we are looking at, and we also have regulatory and operation concerns, such as the watershed district and our own maintenance crews. And so as part of of that process, we do have our DAC. And one of the questions that came up at the recent meeting or the last meeting in June was the decision-making process and how the Design Advisory Committee fits within this project. And so ultimately, City of St. Paul, the Parks and Recreation, is the group that maintains the project. We have the funding, and we are leading the project. So we are ultimately making some of the decisions, but we are relying on the Design Advisory Committee and the subcommittee that was formed to come to a consensus and to create decision making. And so here on the left is showing the Design Advisory Committee. So this is the group here today. And this group has been very vital in advancing the location of the plaza and talking about the process of moving it to a specific point. And so that included Ward 1, 6 representatives of the board, planning districts, and including the art and design professionals. And then we've added the Youth Commission and representatives of the Park and Recreation Commission. So this is the larger group that advanced the design, but at the last meeting, we formed a smaller group made of the design professionals and artists and cultural leaders that can help advance a lot of the specific and significant cultural items for the plaza itself. And so here's a list. Many are on the call today, including Dr. Cha, who is our representative for the Hmong 18 clan leaders. And this is an image of the 2017 master plan that was completed. What has been installed is the gateway on the west side, and the pavilion has been installed. So we are looking at the Hmong Plaza tonight, but we are also, as part of phase 2, designing the chess table, pavilion landscape, the donor wall, and Moon Gate and Moon Bridge. So those are included in the project, but the only thing that is going to be constructed is the Hmong Plaza and surrounding landscape. Here is another image. Most of you will recognize this. This is looking in plan view. The garden is on the north end of the channel, and what is highlighted here in red is phase 2. So once again, what is in red will be designed, but what is being constructed is the Hmong Plaza that sits in between the gateway and the pavilion. And so if you remember, we have 2 different funding sources. One is an Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. This is a legacy fund that has a deadline June 2023, so it's approaching fast. We also have another fund, which is state bonding, and this is directly used for construction only. And that end date is yet to be determined, but it is generally within 2 years from today's date. And so our timeline, we started our last meeting in June and November, where we've been working with the community, going through designs, and it actually went back further into January of this year, and actually at the kickoff of the site. And so now we're moving into the construction document bidding phase once we go through this community engagement that's happening in November and December. Ultimately, we want to have construction documents completed so we can bid out the project and begin construction this spring when the legacy fund ends in June of 2023. So here's a bit of the process that began in 2017. We just went through the master plan, and as part of that plan, we requested funds for the Hmong Plaza. And the role of the DAC, which has been vital, like I mentioned, and we're excited that we can show the new designs. But the last we met, the DAC had developed a couple of design principles that we'll go through. And at that time, the subcommittee then took those design principles and advanced the plaza that we'll see today. And so we're providing the final DAC update of the newly designed plaza, and we ultimately want to take this out for community engagement prior to the construction documents. So as a reminder of what we discussed, and I know there's probably a few members that were not on the previous DAC meetings, but we had a lot of discussion about the plaza itself and the location. And what we determined from the previous design advisory committee meetings is that we want the Hmong Plaza located inside of the garden. And there were several reasons. One is because it promotes friendship. This is a friendship garden. And if it was outside of it, it would lose that idea. There was also a previous site dedication and blessing that is located on the current proposed site. We also discussed using landforms and that this plaza would be built into the hillside. And there's a couple reasons why we did that. One, it includes a retaining wall behind it, which will support the future Hmong migration story. And it does have more of a functional purpose, which does retain soil behind it. Secondly, we determined that we did want terraces to reflect rice paddies and the elephant's foot. So here's an image of typical stepped terrace planters or the rice paddies. And these are the forms that are reflecting those. So these dark black lines are a series of retaining walls that help to form the overflow space, but that was one of the components that we discussed. And we also wanted to balance the intimacy and harmony of the Chinese garden principles. And so we'll go through a lot of these, or you'll see a lot of these design principles in the following images. All right, so here is what was developed over the last 6 months from the subcommittee of design professionals, artists, and we are showing we're showing two views. We're showing a top view of the plaza itself. This is the same size and what we were talking about previously at the DAC meetings. And then this is a front view looking at the plaza. Keep in mind that there are trees behind it, and this is just a rendered view to get a good idea of the size of the wall and the features. This does look a little bit different. If you can see that this is looking down at the plaza from about 15 feet above this point. And so this was created in a model that has a little bit different angle. So keep that in mind. But the most important thing that I want to point out is the features that were selected for this plaza. And there's been a lot of thought put into this, and there's been a lot of back and forth about what are the most significant Hmong features that are going to allow residents of all ages the ability to walk on this plaza and understand that it is Hmong in itself. And so a lot of these features were talked about extensively. And the main elements that were chosen are two things. It's the instrument and the necklace. So here there are two instruments on either side of the wall. And there's also a women's necklace with a pendant that is formed into the wall. And so there was a lot of considerations of other features. I know we talked about a few of these. We did consider, but we did not include at this time, other elements such as the pounder, there's a grinder, women's headdress, the Hmong house, and the phoenix and butterfly. So a lot of these elements were discussed, but the features or the significant cultural items that rose to the top were the instrument and the necklace and pendant. But this isn't to say that these other features or patterns cannot be incorporated into the plan. They definitely can, but at this point, I think those need more community engagement. They need more discussion by the DAC and the subcommittee to understand what are the most significant features. So I will show a few more details. Another one that is identified here is the triangular pattern around the edge. There are many Hmong patterns that we could utilize and that we discussed previously, but this triangle pattern is found surrounding a lot of the Hmong embroidery, and so it is a very iconic and symbolic pattern that can be recognized by many. So that has been included on the outside of the plaza. Another feature that I want to point out that you can see in the front of the plaza are a series or 2 steps. So the idea of this is to raise the plaza up, and it shows a bit of hierarchy against the walkway, and it makes it more prominent as users are walking along the path. As part of the stairs, we do need to provide ADA access. So we do have requirements or regulatory requirements to provide access for strollers, wheelchairs, walkers. So there are ramps on either side of the plaza. So here's a ramp, and this other side has a ramp up. This will require a railing, and that is part of the ADA requirements that are governed by the state. Another feature that did rise to the top, and this is the embroidery pattern of the elephant's foot with a design in the center of it. And so this pattern was discussed and talked about extensively with the subcommittee, and this is the one that rose to the top. And so the main components that the subcommittee developed are, once again, the instruments, the necklace, and then this pattern. Essentially, we've spent a lot of time talking about how we can simplify the plaza, but also to make it iconic for Hmong residents of all ages, so they can clearly relate to what is being shown. I'll talk a little bit about the wall itself. So the wall does have a lot of curved features. This is to resemble mountains, and so there's a variety of walls that that give it some relief, that give it some texture, so it doesn't look as flat. And one member of the subcommittee did mention that the walls do reflect or tie in well with the necklace, where the necklace resembles the woman's head, and then these are the shoulders that come out on the side. So Kali was on the subcommittee, and she was very vital in helping us to design the ideas that the subcommittee was coming up with. So this isn't necessarily strictly designed by Kali, but it was a combined effort and a consensus by the entire, or mostly the entire subcommittee itself. There are features that we were working back and forth with, but these are the main elements. One thing I want to point out is the height of the necklace is at 15 feet. And then the height of the instruments are around 11 feet, and they sit on top of a concrete pedestal, which is anywhere between 5 or 7 feet. I think some of these elements are going to be refined as we move forward, and I will get into some of those elements shortly. One last thing to point out is a bench, and this is a concrete seat wall that is built into the existing wall. So this is 16 feet wide, but users can sit along this. This is roughly the height of a chair, so it's 18 inches tall. And if you look at the top view, it does curve out from the wall on both sides here. So talking about some of these elements, I want to get into some details about what the materials are made out of. And we'll start with the wall, and the wall is made out of concrete, and then it is finished with a stucco, a white stucco finish. And so this is similar to what is behind the pavilion itself. This is the Hmong Heritage Wall, and everything in white is the stucco finish. So this is a close-up of the texture and an idea of what the wall looks like from the side profile. And the reason that this was selected by the subcommittee is, one, it relates to what is currently out there behind the pavilion, and that is used to hold up the Hmong Heritage Wall. And secondly, the walls that may be constructed or designed for the Moon Gate and the Donor Wall would would have a similar texture, and there's a similar proposal for it. So we're trying to develop this character of materials or the consistency of materials through the garden. And this is the recommendation by the subcommittee. In the future, I'll go back. This wall has been designed to allow us to design and place a future Hmong migration story. So what you are seeing here with this tan textured and the larger wall will ultimately have something similar to what you're seeing here with this orange or red granite. And this can be part of this will be likely what the Hmong migration story would be built out of. So we're thinking about phasing in this scenario where what you are seeing here would ideally be built in the first phase and the Hmong migration wall itself. So what could be built in this granite would be designed and constructed at a later date. Going to the concrete plaza, this is showing two examples of the plaza with a sandblast finish. So if we want to get the pattern that is in the middle of the plaza, there are multiple ways to do this. One is by sandblasting, and this is a finish that is typically done in our climate. And here are examples where a template is placed down and they actually spray sand over top of it. So you can get many different textures. You can design a template and that can be placed into the concrete. Another option that looks similar to this is a stamped concrete, and that is basically just different colors of concrete instead of sandblasting. The items that we're looking at that are the significant cultural items, that is the instrument and necklace. The idea for these elements, and these will be developed by the artist and artist fabricator, but these would be made out of stainless steel. Now, I'm showing everyone these designs, but we have an inspiration of what this necklace looks like. And Donna was helpful to show us what a necklace and pendant looks like. This is the inspirational image for the necklace that you see on the wall. And here are some of the finishes that the industry currently has for stainless steel. I will say that these are the inspirational images. This is an image of the instrument, but it ultimately comes down to how the fabricator and the methods and durability to construct it. So we are showing the inspirational images, but I do want to point out that this is all dependent upon the timing, how the fabricator can build it, and then ultimately how long it can last. We want this material to last 30 plus years. And so we need to be thinking about that as well. All right, here are some of the fun images where it really helps you to understand the image and understand the plan views that we are looking at. And so I'll first show you this little inset. This is the point of the viewport of where we're looking at this image, and this is the gateway. So the user has currently walked through the gateway and they're standing to look at the Hmong Plaza. So the pavilion's over here. We are looking northeast towards the proposed Hmong Plaza. And so upon entry to through the gateway, the user is going to be pointed at this set of plant material, but also it's framed by the 3 art stones that are placed in this location. And so I mentioned that they are currently in a temporary spot, and the idea is that we will remove the stones in order to get construction equipment and activities through this, and we are placing them close to the same location and in the same order. One other thing to point out is we were talking about the terraced retaining walls. And here is an image of the terraced walls, which would be made out of the natural boulders that are on site. And it is the grass is planted on top to be reflective of rice paddies. And so the lower wall itself would be a seat wall level. So it would be 18 inches off the ground, similar to any bench or a chair, but it allows users more of an informal seating area if there are no chairs or events happening, where any users could sit along this wall. I imagine people could walk on it, but the idea is users would not walk up on top of the terraces or back behind the wall. Ultimately, we would plant these with a resilient materials such as junipers that would suggest users not walk back behind. One other thing to point out is the stair system. So the plaza itself is raised above the walkway itself, and also it's showing the railing, and we're showing areas that help frame the Hmong Plaza itself. So there's a series of cherry trees or crab apples that would be reminiscent of what would be seen in a Chinese garden, or that are reminiscent of the Hmong culture. And these provide a framing and a viewport that looks towards the Hmong Plaza itself. The second view is standing in the overflow space. So this is the flat grass area that is used for larger events. And so this is looking east towards the pavilion itself. You can still see the pavilion in the background, but this gives you an idea of the seat walls that I was talking about, the size of the pedestal and the instrument, and then a view and height of the necklace itself. And here's another side profile that does give you a better idea of the two stairs and the ADA walkway on either side. One other item that I wanted to bring up, and this was discussed during the site design and site layout of the plant material, are the design principles of intimacy and harmony throughout the garden. And so the idea of my understanding, and that the design professionals have also brought to my attention, is the focal points and directing users' view as they're walking through the garden. And so the idea of the Chinese garden is to experience the garden in very specific locations and through a series of spaces or rooms. And so what I'm showing here through this design are the view sheds, or the focused areas where a person would see as they're walking through the garden. And so I mentioned, as a user would walk under the gateway, their first view would be directed towards the Hmong art stones. And so this is lined up specifically on this axis to be a focal point to draw users in to those art stones. We are trying to frame the view as you're walking up to open up to see the Hmong Plaza, but we are consciously trying to frame the view where we're not seeing the rest of the garden at this point. And so that is the reason for incorporating some of the plant material here. So as a user would walk up, it would read the art stone. You could walk in through the overflow, but as you're walking through the main path, which is paved, the user would walk through the three art stones, and then the Hmong Plaza itself would open up. And so then this is where you would see the space for the Hmong Plaza. There is a specific reason for the plant material in these areas, where we are trying to create a sense of place for the Hmong Plaza. And so this vegetation here has a very direct purpose to show, to, I guess, embrace the Hmong Plaza itself, and to create an area or a room, if you'd like to call it that. Similarly, if you're walking from the east side and you are walking to the pavilion, there is the same plant material that is framing the view of the pavilion from this area until you would get around and come into the Hmong Plaza, which opens up a whole new space and viewport. One thing that I also want to point out is we are showing plant material in between the Hmong Plaza and pavilion. And so this is also showing some grades that are being brought out. So this is raised up a couple feet. And so what happens is this also creates a sense of space for the pavilion. And it also creates more of a direction to cue users to come down. And this is the ADA walk that is needed to access the pavilion. So the idea is we're trying to create these intimate spaces, and we're trying to create these separate rooms as you're experiencing the garden or walking through the garden itself. One other item that I want to talk about is the layout itself and the programming of the plaza. So the DAC was instrumental in helping us to understand where the plaza is located. The DAC helped us to determine the overflow space. And one of the ideas is that the plaza itself would be flexible. There would be opportunities to use this in a small group. There would be opportunities to use it in a larger group. And so the purpose of this graphic here is to show different layouts and the opportunities for different programming sizes. And so this first size, this first image that we're looking at, this is probably the most typical or preferred layout that I heard from based upon the subcommittee. And this is the layout with the north-south axis. And this square right here is a typical stage, which could be 12 by 12. You could probably put 2 or 3 other stages across this, but it is set in front of the instruments and in front of the necklace. And from my understanding, this would be the typical layout. And this is showing these smaller squares are the seating or chair arrangement that could be laid out. And so what is shown in the blue are 124 seats. This is typical of a layout that would be at a wedding where the chairs are next to each other. But this is something that could be curved around and really put in a variety of different rows or ways, depending upon what is being the event that is being held. We are also taking into consideration aisles. So this is, I believe, a 6 to 8 foot aisle in between. For movement, there is also a space in between this other set of seating. So if there was a larger event, there could be another 100 seats for a total of 220 chairs that could be set up out here. What I'm showing here are temporary furnishings, so there would not be a permanent stage and there would not be permanent seating that would be incorporated into the plan. Another layout which does flip the stage onto the east side, it would utilize the backdrop of trees and landform, but this is another opportunity if programming warranted it, but it could be utilized east-west, and this could seat a total of 278. So there are a variety of ways that the site could be used, but these are a couple opportunities or a couple ways to give you an idea. All right, I want to stop there. That is the main design components that was developed by the subcommittee. So a lot of this information was first started by the DAC, which is this group, and the subcommittee has advanced it. And we're looking at a design that I think has largely been supported by the subcommittee. I also presented this to Councilmember Yang and also the Parks and Rec Commissioner, June Yang, this morning, and they were both supportive of what is being shown. I hope to receive other comments from them as we move forward. But I will stop there, and I will answer any questions. It looks like there might be a few in the chat. Looks like Linda has a question. The chairs and layout images are helpful to visualize the seating. How much of this design can be built in 2022 with the existing funds? That's a great question, Linda. What we want to do for the base design. So when I say base design, we would take these graphics and we would begin to work with structural engineers. We would begin to work with artists and fabricators to refine a lot of these components to be able to build them in a real life setting. And so the main features of the plaza are going to be the plaza itself, the concrete plaza, and then the wall, and many of the retaining wall, the natural stone retaining walls. The other elements that will take a bit longer to fabricate and work through with the artists are the necklace. So a lot of these cultural elements. So the instrument and the necklace, we hope that those are part of the base bid, but as we move forward, we will get a better idea from contractors bidding on it and fabricators designing it, what can be incorporated into it. And so I think that leads to a question, Linda, of from this group, is there a priority between the necklace or the instruments if there was an opportunity to install either or? And maybe we don't know that at this point.
I just want to also interject, and I think, Linda, you meant what can be built in 2023. I just want to make sure that's clear that we're beyond construction season for 2022.
Yes,
I just want to make sure
2023,
people.
sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just want to make sure we're managing expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Ellen. That is a good point. I would expect that pending bids that we can begin the plaza and the wall in 2023. The funding, the legacy funding expires, but we can utilize that for construction and to get a contractor on board while we are working with artists and fabricators to build the cultural features. There's another question from Linda. How far above ground are the horizontal part of the instrument? How high enough so people cannot hang on it? So this is showing, and that is a great question. And this question was brought up by operations. Karen's on the call, so she's familiar or has similar questions about that. This is showing a pedestal of 5 feet. And I think this pedestal, as we begin designing, can move up and down by a foot or two. But I think if anything, it could be raised up so people do not hit their head, or it would encourage them to climb up. And so if this is 5 feet, we are showing the curved part of the Kang to be about 7 feet off the ground. And so it should pass the height clearance. I think once we are beginning to design, this pedestal could be raised up slightly to prevent kids or people from hanging on it. And so that goes back to my comment of the materials. We are thinking about stainless steel, but it's all about durability. You know, I think these are respectful and culturally significant items, but we always have to factor in other people using these in a different way. Romy, you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm sorry I wasn't able to figure out how to use the chat. I can't find it. My comment relates to the railings, and I know they're there because of the 2 steps. What I'm surprised to see, but it makes sense, are the 2 ramps on either side for ADA access. What I'm wondering is it possible that ADA access from the path onto the lawn and then onto the plaza would be sufficient so that those railings could be reduced in length to just cover the areas of those two steps and eliminate those two long pieces of concrete. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when you are looking at designing for ADA accessibility, we are designing for a large range or a diverse group of people, whether it's in a wheelchair, strollers, walkers, but we're trying to design for all ages and abilities. So with that said, grass at a 2% slope is ADA accessible, but I don't think that is getting at the intention of the ADA requirements. And I would expect that the Department of Safety and Inspections through the city would not allow a soft surface such as grass to accommodate an ADA access for the plaza.
And I suppose that makes sense, especially in the winter when you would not, you'd have to plow a path or something, so. Yeah,
Yes.
I just see those railings as just being crowd and seating obstructions. They're just, I don't like them, and also it makes those corners out, a different proportion than the others, which was, so it's not as true to the Hmong authenticity of that element. But I know what we've got to do, and I'll probably be handicapped by the time we get this done. So I appreciate it. And thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, and a couple items to follow up, Romy. Those are good points. I think the railing itself is something that can be a design consideration too, where can be an art feature. We can work with our design professionals. We can work with Cowley to have a culturally significant railing, and it doesn't have to be obtrusive. It can blend in with the landscape, but this is something that could have a cultural element to it. The second thing I do want to mention is we talked about winter, and Parks and Recreation does plow the walkways that you are seeing here. So this gray walkway is currently plowed by operations, but we do not, and this is typical of all of our parks, we do not clear any other stairs such as the pavilion, and that would be a similar case for the plaza itself. And so having a ramp and stairs in combination would help with that. So that's just one other thing that I wanted to mention in terms of expectations for maintenance. This path would get plowed, but the pavilion stairs or the stairs and ramps at the Hmong Plaza would not. Donna, you have a question?
Yes. Can you bring the gun back?
Do you want this image or do you want the other material? Okay.
Oh, no, this one is fine. Below the gun, there's two parts. There's one part, it says 5 feet, but there's another at the bottom. Yeah, that one is, how high is that one?
I think this whole thing is 5 feet. This would be probably around 1 foot in height. So the pedestal itself is 4, and then it sits on top of another base that is 1 foot in height.
Okay, my question is that very last one, the last part, the small base, can that be a little bit larger so that people can use it as a seating?
Yeah, I don't see why that couldn't happen. I think we need to look at this seat wall proportionately with that, but we will be moving into more design development and the construction documents, and we can look at the proportions and how that feels. I think that would make sense if the pedestal does get raised to prevent people from climbing up on top.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a little bit bigger on the bottom and maybe even as it is now, is that a climbing encouragement?
Yeah, it very well could be. So even if you're raising up the pedestal, then then you're ultimately giving them a step and you're
Yeah.
subtracting the height.
Right.
Yeah, I guess that is another good point where we could take a look at maybe the seat walls function as an area where people could sit, and we remove this larger base altogether.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you, Donna. Are there any other questions? We can go through the materials, looking at the views. I think it's self-explanatory from, I guess, my work with the subcommittee on a lot of these elements, and I think there's generally a lot of support and enthusiasm by the subcommittee and with the council member and commissioner. So if there are no other questions, maybe some will come to you. I can talk about some of the next steps. What we have done is this group has been great. This group has been very dedicated. So I thank you. I can't thank you enough. We've gone through many more design advisory meetings than I anticipated. But you helped us get to a point where we could advance the design. So I think this is a very exciting moment that we've reached. And so what we are doing is, this is ideally the final design advisory meeting where we now begin to hire professional engineers to help really figure out how these components can be built in real life. Before that happens, we do want to reach out to the Park and Recreation Commission. So we tentatively have that scheduled for December 8th, where we will provide an informational presentation to them, similar to what you saw here today. I'm hoping that at that time, Dr. Chaw can also take this presentation and graphics and take that to the Hmong 18 clan leaders for feedback. And then also during that time, we want to reach out to the community. And we've got a few ideas that we've discussed with the subcommittee, and that is to have a series of open houses. And these would be at places such as the Hmong Excellent School, Hmong Village, where we can reach a lot of users. And so we would have an open house for several hours where people can come up and get an idea of the plans. We would also plan for a specific time that I could have a short presentation and present this if the community wanted to at a specific time. Another item that was brought up when we're reaching out to these families is to have an interpreter on site. And so those are some of the ideas that we've thought of. But first we want to go through the Park Commission and allow the Hmong 18 clan leaders to review. After that, I think we would bring the subcommittee back for any refinement that is needed. Ultimately, we would advance into construction documents, and we would provide the DAC email updates of any changes that would happen to date, or just to provide project updates on where construction or bidding is at. And hopefully we will have good bids and shovels in the ground early in 2023. It looks like, are there any more questions, Ellen, do you see? It looks like, Gali, you had, you support maybe some cultural designs for the railings, and it looks like Jeff is supportive of the open house.
Yep.
And I also did receive some preliminary commitments by Commissioner June Yang that she could help with some of those open house events, and to be a member that goes out to the community to help spread the message of the amazing plaza and design that has been worked on to date. Bill, your hand's up.
So just other suggestions for meeting sites would be the Arlington Community Library. And so we have a given amount of money, and once you have the drawings, you'll get bids. What happens if the money doesn't cover the costs?
That's a great question. I think we have money that we need to utilize, so we would be looking at what are the most significant features that we want to include on the site. And so I think we would have to go back to the subcommittee and to find a recommendation of what elements, the necklace, the instrument, maybe some of the patterns, maybe there are some materials that can be changed in order to get a good base that can be built in this first phase, and then funding would have to be acquired at that point.
Yeah, there isn't going to be enough time to mount much of a funding campaign if the money doesn't cover the costs. So.
No, that is correct. But I think what we can do is we can work with our engineers and our consultants to figure out what is a priority in this first phase that can be built that doesn't set us back for any future construction phases once funding is acquired.
And then there's many other features of the second phase that haven't been defined to the degree this has been. And we need to expedite this part of the second phase. But do you plan to bring the DAC back again at some point to review the other features once they're better defined?
Yeah, that is a good question too. So if you remember, I was talking about the other phases of the project that we have funding for to advance them to design it themselves. So it's not construction, but we may have other phases that are refined. So the moon gate, the donor wall, that should be brought in front of the DAC. So that is yet to be determined, but we do want to keep the DAC in the loop, and we will be providing email updates and if there are major changes to have another DAC meeting.
This is Linda. I just wanted to piggyback on what Bill was saying. Once we know how much things are going to cost and what will be covered with the funds we have, we may have an opportunity to seek out funding for specific elements that aren't covered. And if we have a good solid price, that might be easier to find funding for certain elements.
Yes, Linda, I agree. Once we have bids completed, so we will design and create construction documents for what we are seeing here. But then the benefit of that is we will have solid construction costs for each element that we can seek funding and have a good idea of what we're actually looking at for a price.
As long as you're on that slide, could you add a measurement bracket for the extension of the gang instrument for the future?
Yes, in between here.
Yes, that from the edge down to the ground.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah.
For the 7 feet.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. One last call. Are there any questions about the process, the plaza itself, or the next steps?
Nice job, Brett.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Really nice.
This has been a great experience. I think everyone has collectively pulled together a great design that can be supported by the community. So I'm excited to proceed and begin planning for the community engagement. And so I think this DAC will also receive that correspondence to understand what are the next steps and where and when the DAC can be involved and support the project and reach out to their social networks to be able to see it at those events. So with that, everyone enjoy your night, enjoy the holiday weekend. I believe we have Thanksgiving, we've got the Hmong New Year coming up.